Welcome to the Deep Dive. So today we're taking your sources and we're looking at South Korea, a nation that's it's perfectly marketed itself as this global cultural superpower. But we're not just here to celebrate the Hallyu wave, the K-pop, the K-dramas, all of it. Our mission today is to really understand this extreme contradiction. First, we'll unpack the sheer scale of the global obsession, especially in India. Then, we're going deep into the hidden costs, the crushing societal pressure that's right behind that flawless exterior. We need to find out the price of perfection.
And that price is steep. You have to remember the speed of their ascent. I mean, if we connect the dots, we're analyzing a nation that in the 1950s was it was ruins after the war, cities were gone, the population was suffering. But in just a few decades, they pull off what the world calls the miracle on the Han River. And that wasn't just about rebuilding, it was a rapid, almost forced march to economic superpower status. The pressure it took to achieve that kind of velocity is still baked into the culture, and that's the human price we need to talk about.
Okay. Let's unpack the sheer scale of that Hallyu influence outside Korea. And let's start with India, because it is truly astounding. The sources show this wave music, drama, food, beauty was a conscious government-backed strategy. It wasn't an accident.
And it worked because it connected on this really deep personal, emotional level. I mean, look at this one data point. Korean is now the fastest growing foreign language in India, especially after shows like Squid Game. People aren't just reading the subtitles.
No, they're learning the language. It shows this genuine desire to internalize the culture.
And you can see it on the grocery shelves.
Oh, absolutely. India's instant noodle market is already huge, over 15,000 crore, but it's the Korean ramen brands, Samyang, Nongshim, that are the fastest growing segment. And on delivery apps like Swiggy, the demand for Korean food shot up, 59% in the last year alone?
It's total cultural adoption.
It is, in fashion, language, diet, everything.
But that emotional connection, it starts as admiration, but it can tip over into something more problematic, a kind of obsession, which is the immediate fallout of that blind idealization.
Right, and there's a really sobering story in the source material on that. The case in Maharashtra, 3 young girls, they were like 11 to 13 years old, ran away from home.
And where were they going?
Well, they were found in Pune. And the reason they ran away, they were trying to earn enough money to fly to South Korea to meet BTS. They had no passports, no money, no realistic plan at all. The desire to reach that idealized place was so intense it just overrode all common sense.
Exactly. And that emotional pull is centered on this manufactured image of perfection, which is delivered, largely through K-dramas. Yep. We see in the sources that Indian girls explicitly say they see Korean men as more caring, soft, and perfect than guys at home.
And on the flip side of that, you get this negative self-image fallout. We're seeing it in young men. The sources show Indian boys are now unhappy with their own appearance. They're searching YouTube for tutorials on how to look like a Korean.
And those videos get millions of views.
Millions. It's affecting their self-worth, not just what clothes they wear.
And this is a really critical point. We have to pause and question this intense, blind idealization. It raises a key question that the material actually addresses.
Yeah.
Is this obsession a two-way street? Are Koreans equally obsessed with Indian culture?
With Bollywood, with the food.
And the answer, based on personal experiences from travelers, is a definitive and often pretty harsh no. Which leads us right to the first big crack in that glossy exterior. The racism faced by the very people consuming their culture. We're seeing stories from Indian travelers, residents, about really disheartening discrimination in Korea, restaurants with signs saying, Indians not allowed, or staff treating them like dust.
That is such a harsh contradiction. A country exports this image of harmony and perfection, but the reality on the ground for that global audience can be so different. One of the sources mentions the Indian travel blogger, Dipanshu Sangwan.
The Nordic Indian.
Yeah, him. He documented facing discrimination specifically because of his brown skin. So the message is pretty clear. The global success of Hallyu doesn't necessarily translate into acceptance of that global audience.
It creates this cognitive dissonance. But if we're really talking about the price of the Hallyu wave, we can't stop at the audience. We have to look at the pressure on the people creating the glamour.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. Let's look at the price paid by the source of all that glamour, the K-pop idols themselves. This system is maybe the purest distillation of South Korea's high-pressure culture.
The whole idol system is a massive engine that's designed for hyper-perfection. And it runs on just extreme physical and psychological stress. The training starts so young, sometimes 10 or 12 years old.
And it can last for a decade or even more with absolutely no guarantee you'll ever debut.
None. Stress, anxiety, sleep deprivation,
Okay.
those are just part of the daily curriculum.
Then you have the financial structure, which is, well, it's almost predatory. It's built on debt. Before they debut, these trainees sign what are infamously known as slave contracts.
And the company gets total control over everything. Their diet, their housing, who they can see, whether they can date.
But the really devastating part is the debt. All the training costs, the singing lessons, the dance classes, housing, it's all converted into a loan. The idol has to pay back that massive debt with their future earnings.
So they spend years training, they finally debut, they achieve global fame, and for the first few years of their career, they're just working to pay off the cost of their own training.
And hanging over them is the constant threat of cancel culture.
Yeah.
In this system, it's like a corporate failsafe. The idol's manufactured image is their biggest asset, so one controversial statement, one mistake.
Or even just a baseless rumor.
Right. It can completely obliterate a career instantly. This constant pressure leads to profound depression among the stars.
We see the extreme human cost of this in cases like Sully, a former member of the group FX. She was really outspoken. She advocated for women's rights. She talked about mental health and body positivity.
And for that,
she faced just relentless online harassment, hate comments, rumors. She even asked publicly, "Why are you saying bad things about me? What did I do to deserve this?" She tragically took her own life. She was only 25.
and that kind of pressure isn't just in the entertainment industry. The idol struggle is really a microcosm of a national struggle.
Exactly. This is part of a much bigger documented pattern. The sources cite an OECD report showing South Korea has the highest suicide rate among all developed countries, and the numbers are stark. 767 documented suicides in just the first half of 2025.
And we're talking about a wealthy, developed nation.
Right. So people aren't taking their lives because of poverty or lack of basic needs. It's the mental pressure. It's the unrelenting weight of unmet expectations.
And that pressure starts incredibly early. It dictates your entire life. So let's pivot to the academic pressure cooker that starts in childhood. It all boils down to this concept known as SKY.
SKY. It stands for Seoul National University, Korea University, and Yonsei University, the top three. And the rule is brutally simple. If you graduate from a SKY university, a high-paying job is practically guaranteed. If you don't.
If you're outside that system, the doors are basically blocked no matter how hard you work.
So to get into SKY, the school schedule is just relentless, often 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. The average student is getting maybe 4 to 5 hours of sleep.
There's that famous and honestly disturbing saying that underpins the whole system. If you sleep 4 hours, you have a chance. If you sleep 5, you fail. It's not education, it's an endurance test.
And even that isn't enough. The most competitive students then go to private tutoring academies called hagwons, which can run until midnight. This creates a huge inequality because many families just can't afford them.
And all of it culminates in one day. The Sunung exam. The National College Entrance Exam. It's a single 8-hour day that decides a student's university and, by extension, their entire social standing.
The whole country literally pauses. The stock market opens late, construction stops, planes are grounded. The police will even escort students to the exam if they're running late.
An entire nation holding its breath for one exam.
And that toxic competitive spirit, it doesn't end when you get into a good university. It follows you straight into the workplace. You enter this highly competitive work culture, often dominated by the K-ball system.
Okay, let's quickly define chaebol. We're talking about the giant family-owned conglomerates, Samsung, LG, companies like that which dominate the whole Korean economy.
Exactly. And their internal culture is where the concept of gapjil becomes really prominent. The term comes from Korean contract law. Gap is the superior party, Uyul is the subordinate. So gapjil is the open, ingrained misuse of power by bosses and wealthy customers.
And it isn't just being a rude boss. It's an institutionalized power imbalance. The sources say chaebol companies often treat their employees like property, yelling, public insults, even forcing people to kneel.
And it is incredibly pervasive. A 2022 CNN report on a survey found that 30% of Korean workers reported experiencing workplace bullying or harassment. It's almost an expected part of climbing the ladder.
There's a perfect and just shocking example from the sources that shows the sheer ego of gapjil. The 2014 Korean Air incident.
The nut rage incident?
That's the one.
Wow.
A senior executive, the chairman's daughter, forced a plane that was already on the runway to return to the gate. And why? Because her macadamia nuts were served in a packet, not on a plate. She abused the crew and had them kicked off the plane, delaying hundreds of people over a bag of nuts. That is gapjo.
But even competing in that system doesn't guarantee you'll be financially stable. The pressure and the soaring cost of living have created a national debt crisis. 7 out of 10 young Koreans have taken out loans just for basic living expenses.
And the size of that debt is huge, often 40 to 60 million won, which is what, around $41,000 USD? What's truly alarming is the cycle. Young people are taking out new loans just to pay off the old ones. They are financially trapped after successfully running that entire rat race.
And housing is just prohibitive in Seoul. An average apartment is 6 to 7 crore won and much, much higher in a place like Gangnam. Even renting is a challenge because of this unique system called jeons,
Right, so instead of monthly rent, you pay a massive lump sum deposit up front.
a huge sum, often 4 to 5 crore won.
So if you're not paying rent, where's the risk in that?
The risk is massive. If the landlord defaults on their own mortgage or mismanages the money, the tenant can lose that entire lump sum. And for a young person, that's either their life savings or, more likely, another huge loan they had to take out. So you've got this constant pressure from education, debt, toxic work, and now housing insecurity.
All of this pressure, the studying, the debt, the work stress, it brings us to the most dire consequence of all this demographic cliff that threatens the whole nation's future.
South Korea's fertility rate has plummeted to 0.7. That is the lowest in the entire world. And to put that into perspective, you need a rate of 2.1 just to keep your population stable.
If this trend continues, the population is projected to halve in the next 50 years.
It's an existential threat, and the sources are clear. This extreme pressure is the key reason why families hesitate to have even one child. They just can't afford, financially or psychologically, to put a child through the SKY rat race and the gap-jewel work environment that follows.
And this societal quest for perfection is also, visually reflected in the extreme beauty standards that are projected globally through K-beauty.
Right. The ideal Korean face is so specific and often unrealistic. Big eyes, small nose, fair skin, a V-shaped jaw. The pursuit of that is so ingrained that South Korea has the highest rate of plastic surgery per capita in the world. It's often given as a graduation gift.
And that preference for fair skin is historically rooted in class, right? It meant you didn't work outside.
Exactly, and that standard persists today. It means there's just constant scrutiny and comparison in daily life.
Which creates a huge psychological burden. One source mentioned needing 30 extra minutes just to get ready for a simple errand like going to the grocery store because of the social pressure to look flawless.
And that ideal has a massive global reach through the K-beauty trend for glass skin. It's the fastest growing segment in the global beauty industry, set to hit, $1.5 billion by 2030?
But the consequences are already being seen worldwide. A study cited in the sources looked at teen girls in Delhi NCR and found many were developing negative body images and low self-confidence from the constant comparison to these idealized standards they see online.
Which brings us to the ultimate cautionary tale here. We have to mention Hang Myoku, a former Korean model whose addiction to plastic surgery just spiraled out of control. When doctors refused to do more procedures, she started injecting black market silicone and then, tragically, cooking oil into her own face.
It's a horrifying story.
It is, and the problem isn't the cultural preference itself. It's turning that preference into an extremist obsession that dictates a person's entire self-worth.
So this is the synthesis of our deep dive. The sources show that this high-achieving, seemingly perfect image of South Korea that powers the Hallyu wave exists hand-in-hand with an immense documented human cost. From contract servitude and psychological strain to widespread youth debt, and now the threat of a demographic collapse.
The culture of perfection demands profound sacrifice. The miracle on the Han River was built on a level of national pressure that has now reached a boiling point. It's creating incredible success abroad while fueling misery and crisis at home.
So what does all this mean for you, the listener?
Well, the point isn't to shame the country. It's a caution against the blind idealization of any foreign culture or any success story, really, without understanding the sacrifices and the deep social toll behind the visible, glamorous success. Every shine has a shadow. And that leaves us with our final provocative thought for you to consider. If this entire high-pressure system, from the SKY education to the toxicity of gapjewel to the crushing debt, is directly responsible for the world's lowest birth rate, how long can the engine of perfection that drives the Hallyu wave and the miracle on the Han River sustain itself before it simply runs out of people?